Welcome to your Adobe After Effects basic training. My name is Eli Rigatuso, and I am a video producer director in Omaha, Nebraska. Actually, the senior video producer director with Bellevue University out of Bellevue, Nebraska. Been doing that for quite some time. I'm just going to say welcome to y'all. And I'm also trying to pull up the chat here. Just want to let you know right off the bat that we have, if you are on this training and you are looking for some sort of a certification or notification that you actually attended this training, they don't actually provide certification. However, if you need something that states that you were in this training, you can actually email the folks at DoSpace, and my little technology assistant here, well, I don't want to call him little, but my amazing technology assistant will actually copy and paste that information into the chat for everyone to see. There it is. So you would have to follow those instructions in regard to that. And I am going to do my best to give you a quick overview of After Effects. Actually, what you're seeing right now is a project that I was working on earlier today, which almost had me miss this, this training. Because this is what I do every day. I work within multiple Adobe programs, After Effects, Premiere Pro, Photoshop, Illustrator. A lot of these different programs work really beautifully together because you can create graphics in one and then bring them into another program and make changes to some of these things, and they'll automatically update in other places as long as you have them connected. So what we're looking at here is a general layout for Adobe After Effects. And this project here is a project that I was working on, as I said, today. And, and this project didn't start here. It actually started in another program, which is Premiere Pro. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because, as you can see here, there's a little mask around my character that is in, well, not my character, but the person who's starring in this video. And that masking is also part of a key out. So I have a couple of different effects that I've placed over this person. So we shot them on green, and I used the key light effect in here to actually get rid of the green background. So it's a very cool, very smooth thing to have access to that. But I will tell you this much. You want to make sure that if you're shooting something on a green screen that you light it up really nice. Otherwise you end up with what they call a dirty key. And that's just something that's kind of beyond this lesson. But I can tell you this much. It is really easy to get started using a program like After Effects. If you do have video editing experience in another program, a lot of that does cross into the same types of things that you'll see or that will be available to you in a program like After Effects. But After Effects gives you a little bit more control. There's different things that you can do with camera movements. There's 3D things that you can create. You can edit in 3D space, so you can kind of push things back and forth within that 3D space. And those are all very easy things to do right here in this program. But like I said, if you wanted to just start from scratch, obviously this is not from scratch here. This is something that I've already created and kind of dragged and dropped in some different elements. But I'm going to give you a little bit about the layout. When you first open up After Effects, and actually what I'm going to do here is I am going to stop my screen share for just a second. And I am going to restart after I save. You always want to get into a habit of saving your stuff. But I'm actually going to restart After Effects so that you can see from scratch, basically, what it looks like to start a project. So I'm just going to open a new project and I'm going to share my screen quick so you can see what it looks like when you first go into After Effects. So here's a basic layout that you're going to see in After Effects when you first start a project. There's a variety of different ways you can go about starting a project. You can start by creating a new composition. You can actually just import by double clicking in this little field here on the left. You could actually just import a video clip and start a project that way. If you know how long your project is going to be, that's going to be something important that you're going to need to note at this point as well, because After Effects is a little different. In Premiere, you can kind of lay things out on a timeline and do it in a very linear fashion. In After Effects, depending upon what it is exactly you want to do and how you want to layer certain scenes within your project, you might create one composition that does one thing that you then import into another part of your project. So basically over here in this left-hand window that I'm in right now, where my arrow is at, this is going to be your project folder. And this is where everything that you import into the project, you're going to import it into this particular space. You're going to want to learn from the beginning to organize your files in a manner that makes sense to you. And I say that very specifically because depending upon how you work and how your brain operates, the way I lay something out may not work the same way you would lay something out. Hi, Lenny. I see you here from the Philippines. Welcome to the training. So anyway, so you just kind of want to get an idea of what works best for you when you start a project. I typically will start a project by having a script and a voiceover. So I'll have a voiceover track completed that I can then import into the project. And then that's where I kind of start to lay out my different pieces of the project. So like I said, this is our projects folder. Right now we have these effects controls, but it says there are no effects controls because I haven't created anything in a timeline. And your timeline is actually going to be what it ends up down here once you create a new composition within your project. You got a variety of different tools up here. As you can see right now, a lot of these tools are grayed out. And the reason why they're grayed out is because we haven't created a new composition in order to start making our project. Once we do create a new composition, and like I said, you know, you want to know kind of how long that composition is going to be. And in order to create how, you know, it's going to ask you some questions when you create a new composition. Those questions. So when you click this new composition, there's a variety of different things that it's going to ask you. And the biggest thing is the duration. So what's the duration of your project? Is it going to be a 10-second project, something real quick that you go through, or is it going to be 15 or 30 seconds? Again, you kind of want to figure that out before you actually even start a project, unless of course you're creating one element of a project and maybe you're wanting to create something in a 3D space, which you can actually do here. And then that would be different. So you might create that might be only 5 seconds of a longer 30-second video. So you're going to create that composition so you can manage all of those elements within that composition. But this is basically where you're going to start, is creating your composition. And then you will notice, and I'll just go ahead and create a composition. For those of you who are familiar with broadcast editing types of things, you have a variety of different sources that you can start with, depending upon where you're going to end up placing your video. You also want to think about what you're shooting in. So if you're shooting with a Canon DSLR, for example, you'll want to create your project so that it is formatted the same as what you shot in. So a lot of your DSLRs today will shoot in either 1080p or 720p, and you're going to want to edit in something compatible to that. But what's really cool is there's a lot of already created spaces. So, 1080p is kind of a general, what a lot of these DSLRs today are shooting. So if you selected that, you would be pretty safe. 2997 is just a frame rate. And you can kind of move around a lot of these things. You can lock your aspect ratio. We can change it to 720p, and that'll kind of change some of those numbers. But again, as a general rule, you're going to want to check and see what format your camera is shooting in, especially if you're going to be importing from that camera pretty consistently. So you want to create the space in that manner. So, so we have created a 30-second composition here, and notice how now we have some of these other tools available to us up in our tools panel. The other things that you want to be aware of is that this is your project space. All of your elements are going to be brought into this space. We have the way that I have this laid out. You can actually switch that layout up. And that's by clicking on this little double arrow to the right. You can actually open all panels so that you can see all the panels that are available and all the different elements and all the different transitions and all those things that are available. If you're working specifically on an animation, you might want to switch it to animation, because it'll give you the tools that you're going to use most frequently if you're creating something that's in animation. If you're doing essential graphics, which you might be working more on, say, text editing, creating text overlays for a project, that might be the window that you edit in. There's color windows, and this is where you're actually going in and looking at and tweaking the color of the video that you're importing in. I usually edit either in all panels or using animation, because most of the things that I use are right here in the effects and presets panel, and also just some audio editing. I do not actually export audio directly from After Effects. I will use it as a guide. As, for example, if you want text to move across and maybe the words are popping on and off the screen as the speaker is saying them, then you're going to want to be able to hear the audio so that you can lay out your timeline. Some other things to be aware of up over here are just, again, different default layouts. You've got your standard layout, which gives you your text animation or your text editing options. So that's there, small screen. These are just some things that I've created, my own library. That's another thing. If you have Adobe, if you have the program itself and you utilize across a different number of different of the platforms, you're actually going to find those things here in your own libraries. But I'm going to change this to all panels. Again, Alberto, thank you so much for asking. There's no certificate provided. You will need to contact DoSpace, and you can shoot them an email and they'll verify that you attended the class, but they don't actually provide certifications or certificates. All right. So the other thing is you can change settings here. You can sync settings. So if you create something that you're going to use again and again and again, you can customize those settings for yourself. You can also customize the layout that you're working in here and name it something. So that's where you would go down and edit your workspace. So if there are certain tools that you use more frequently and that you want to have them at your fingertips, you can create that workspace and you can call it something so that you can recall that workspace whenever you're working within the program. Again, I just use all panels because that just gives me all the things that I'm just used to having things laid out in that manner. Okay, so I'm going to go through these tools. Obviously, your home is basically takes you back to the home page and opening of the program. And actually, this is the page that you'll see when you launch the program. So you can actually click on and open a project that you were already working on if you've already started. There's a number of amazing tutorials available right here through Adobe. and they'll teach you little things as you go along. So you can click and start a tutorial and walk through a tutorial. There's different other different tutorials available where they're consistently upgrading what you can do with this platform. So it's really nice to be able to go and click on some of these options and go learn something new rather quickly. And so I'm going to just click back on here and I'm going to say, don't save. So now I'm reopening that project that I had here before. And I'm going to show you a few other things. Basically the hand tool, I don't really ever use the hand tool, but when you use the hand tool, you're basically just going to be moving things around. It doesn't necessarily impact where it's laid out. So for example, I've got Ron on camera here. In order to actually remove or actually move or select Ron, I would need to use this little arrow here, which is the selection tool. And then I could come down and select Ron on camera. And then anything that's applied to Ron, either effects, masks, right? That's one of the things about After Effects that is really cool is the masking capability. You can do very rudimentary masks, which is basically this mask that I have on him on that keyed out background because I shot him in a room where we have lights set up. And actually, I'll show you that so you can see what I'm talking about. That's not the one. Okay, so I'm going to turn that off. And then I'm going to come down to this mask. And I am going to actually click invert mask. Yep. So you can see here what that mask is covering up are the lights that are lighting up that green screen that we shot him on, right? And so that's the best way and the quickest way to just mask something out so that, and he moves his hands quite a bit. So I have to kind of leave the mask in such a way that when he moves his hands out to the side, his hands aren't flying off the screen. So, hello, Janelle. Again, if you are looking for a certificate, they do not provide certificates. They do provide, however, the ability for you to email them so that you can let whoever you need to let know that you were in attendance, and they will give that information at the end of the training. So, and if you have any specific questions about what I'm showing you here, feel free to ask that in the chat and I will get to that. And I also have a person from Do Spaces here on this call with me. And if I miss something, they will let me know. So if you have any other specific questions that don't have to do with certification, So as you can see, I mean, there's a variety of different effects that you can also apply to any piece of footage that you bring into the program. But like I said before, now that I have actually something in my timeline, there are other tools that are available. There's the zoom tool, which basically will let me zoom right into something. Get really far into something. There are shortcut keys, and depending upon whether or not you're using Mac or using an IBM machine, they're different. So it's important to kind of figure out which ones you have available to you. And there's a whole bunch of shortcuts that you can actually just find if you Google them. If you type that into Google and just say After Effects shortcuts, it'll give you all the shortcuts that you need. But I'll be honest with you, I never memorized any of those shortcuts because I just got used to using the ones that I use most frequently and just keep using them. So, Anna, let's see. So Anna, they're going to paste that at the end. You're going to need to, let's see here. You'll receive an email verifying your attendance in class one day following the event. So that actually will come to you automatically is what it says here. If you'd like to view the program again, you can find a recording of the event at our YouTube page. And you can also see a list of other webinars that are available. There is that information again. Thank you so much, DoSpace. So other tools that are available here. Now, some of these tools actually are also still grayed out. And the reason why those tools are grayed out is because that some of these tools are also only if you're working in 3D space. Would you be able to have that kind of ability to kind of like orbit around something? So that's why some of these other tools are grayed out. And how do you know whether or not something is in 3D space? Is down here in the panel, we can turn on different switches that are available. And basically 3D is this switch here for 3D layer. But as you can see, I don't have anything in this particular project that's a 3D layer. So it's not going to give me, that's not something that's going to be shown to me or available to me in this particular project. The other thing that can help is as you're starting and working through After Effects and learning some of the different things that After Effects is capable of doing, there's a couple of different resources. One is YouTube. If you are curious about how to maybe create a singular 3D element, you could actually YouTube that and it'll walk you through all the instructions. And so that's one of the other things that's kind of cool about this program is, if I wanted to learn how to make this text come on in a certain way on screen, you can typically find a YouTube video to help walk you through how to make that happen. So, and there's also all kinds of templates and other things that are available to kind of speed up your editing process. But again, this particular layout in this program, I use this in Premiere Pro and then brought this into After Effects so that I could add text and then also key out the green screen that we shot him on, because the keying abilities in After Effects are much better than the keying abilities that you can find in Premiere Pro. So at least up to this point, that's kind of where I'm at with it. There's a rotation tool, which basically, if you hold W down on your key and you come over here, you can actually rotate something. Now, again, if you're working in 3D space, it's going to rotate in different ways than what this is rotating now. But if you're working in 2D space, the rotation is going to be 2D, right? As opposed to 3D. There is the pan behind tool, which is also the anchor point tool. So as you can see here, I'm going to actually turn some of these other video pieces off so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to turn off this background. And well, actually, I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to, well, actually, I'm not going to turn that off. I want you to be able to see this. But this, so for example, I'm going to click on Run and I'm going to click R because that will bring up rotation down here. Now, as you can see, this rotation on Run is at this anchor point that's in the center of him. So here's Run, here's the anchor point that's right on Run, right? And so depending upon how we want that particular item to rotate, right, we would want to move that anchor point around so that it looks authentic or that it looks right. It'd be kind of weird if it was rotating in a weird space, like off to the side. Or for example, if we were looking at this logo, right now it's centered. Maybe we wanted it to spin in though from this piece, or not that, oops, sorry. But we want it to spin on a corner, from a corner, we would have to set it in the corner. How are we doing that? To make that rotation work the way that we want it to. So there we go. So that's obviously spinning on a corner, which would make sense if we wanted it to come in from a certain angle off the page. We can do that as it fades onto the screen. But that's basically what your pan behind tool or your anchor point tool will help you edit that anchor point. That actually works really well if you're doing animation and say you want to animate someone's arm waving. You would want to put that anchor point here on an elbow so that that part of the hand, or that part of the arm would be the part that would rotate. But each of those elements would have to be separated out. So that's the other thing about After Effects. You know, it is a very powerful program, but depending upon how your brain works, it's going to take a little bit more to learn about, okay, so I have to have this be separate from this. So it'd have to be on two different layers, so to speak. And then that anchor point for waving by my elbow would have to happen here. And most of the time when you bring something into the program, it automatically brings that anchor point into the center. So the anchor point is an important tool to know. And as we keep going up here, we have the rectangular tool, and that's a nice tool for, say, for example, I did not have the mask layer that I had on Ron. And so I'm going to go back to Ron. And this is the mask that's currently on there, but you can actually do a real quick mask on something by just grabbing this rectangle tool and then dropping it right on your oops, dropping it right on something. But as I said before, his hands are moving quite a bit when he talks. And so as he's moving off screen, we'll lose his hands in a weird place. So like for his hands to go off of this mask would seem odd right in the center of the page like that. So that's another reason why I drew the mask the way that I drew it on there. But these are for quick mask options. You can actually use that rectangle tool. It's also a great way to create a rectangle quickly if you need it somewhere else. So for example, if you wanted to have a blue rectangle, you can create a layer that's all blue and then use this rectangle tool to create your rectangle, which is a real quick way to do that. Now there's also the pen tool. The pen tool is used for a variety of different things as well. I used the pen tool when I made this mask. I just basically click around on these different points to make this mask. But the pen tool would actually also give me the ability to come in here and literally mask him out completely. And some of the new things going on within After Effects now is that you can teach a mask on video to move with the person as well. But these are all things that are very, they take time to actually create some of these masks, to create some of these steps, and then to make that mask move frame by frame by frame. But this gives you the ability, if you have a still image, for example, that you bring in and you want to cut it out of a certain background, you can do that really quickly utilizing the pen tool. I'm just going to kind of keep going down this little lane here and talk about these different tools. Again, if you have any questions about these tools as we're going through them, please feel free to plop that in the chat. And I will be happy to answer your questions, or you can also put questions in Q&A. Angel, no, the app is not free to download. As a matter of fact, all of Adobe products are, you have to purchase subscriptions, and they're typically a monthly subscription. The great thing about it, though, is that if you just wanted Premiere Pro or you just wanted After Effects, you could actually go in and pay for just that app. I do know that some of these apps don't actually work on your phone. They also don't work on, say, an iPad. Some of them do, but some of them do not. So you'll want to think about that depending upon where you're utilizing it, which version you would want to use. And so, I am going to ask you all a question. You can plop your answers in the chat. What had you come to this training today, and what did you want to know about After Effects? Like, what is it that you're curious about? Because there's really, honestly, if you've never used the program, but you're curious about animation and what kind of animation it does, then that would be one thing. And certainly it would be a good avenue to go down for you if you're working on animating. Also, it's a great tool for 3D animation, although I will say this much, for some of these things, you do have to have a pretty powerful computer. So you do want to check And Adobe does provide ways for you to check what kind of requirements, what the minimum requirements would be for your computer to actually do this editing. Now, I can tell you that if you buy a laptop, one of the better laptops available, say through Mac, most of their laptops, actually, these programs can be utilized. Now, again, there will be some limitations. There will be slow rendering times when you're trying to render something out. Like if you create a pretty robust 3D animation, it may take a little longer for your laptop to render it out. But if you have a desktop that has a lot of RAM built into it, it may not take as long. So that's one of the things that I think is also really important when you're looking at these types of tools and trying to figure out which tool fits best for you. So I do see we have 38 people in here and I have no questions. So if you have a question, let me know. Amber, let's see here. Want to learn more? Only used in limited capacity. Would you like to learn how to manipulate templates? I struggle to adjust length, etc. Do you often create everything from scratch or do you use templates too? I do use templates, Amber, and I would agree. There are times when you're utilizing a template where it can get a little tricky figuring out what they did and how they did it. One of the recommendations I would make for you though is to check this stay shy and hide layer, especially on a template. Sometimes they actually will hide layers and make it difficult for you to see exactly what they did. So you have to unhide those layers so that you can go in there and kind of look at templates. Wayne, see what this effects is about. I have the Creative Cloud and learning about all the programs. Right on, Wayne. If you have Creative Cloud, I would also recommend going through some of the training that they offer. And they have like great little tutorials that you can go through to learn certain things. Let's see. Brian Johnson was hoping to see a logo animation reveal or the type of animation I see from brands on Instagram. All right. Angel, can you edit the clothes that they wear and change it? Angel, that would be a little tricky. You could change clothing color. There are some ways that you can go in here and edit hues and that type of thing. So if you wanted to, say, for example, change the hue of his shirt, you could do that, but it changes everything. So it's not the same as when you go into a certain program and just click on it and change it. It's a little different than that. Let's see here. Yeah, and Brian, in regard to logo animation, there's a variety of different things that you can do. There's templates that are available out there that you can create and drag and drop your own logo into. Just kind of depends upon what you're looking at in regard to a logo reveal. But this program will give you the ability to do a whole variety of different things. I mean, you can take, for example, my logo here. Now, I don't know if you've been noticing, I've been changing. Basically what this is resolution. So you can either have it at full resolution, which as you can see, it looks better when I click on full, but that takes up more RAM when I am viewing how something's going to come on screen. Let's see here. Kent, done projects in the past using, but the file size is too big. How can I reduce the size of it without affecting the graphic? Kent, well, how are you saving your files? Are you saving them as JPEGs or PNGs? If you're bringing them in as a Photoshop file, that's actually going to act differently than if you bring it in with a JPEG with an alpha channel, or like, for example, this logo here that I have on screen. This is a PNG, formatted as a PNG with a transparent background. And so I can actually edit the size of this rather quickly here, and the resolution pretty much stays the same. Can't get too big because I brought it in kind of small to begin with. But that would be the other thing that I would recommend, is that, think about, where do you edit your images from? Are you editing them in Photoshop, Kent? Emily, can you import a digital drawing that you create from a drawing Adobe software? yes, you should be able to import those types of things. Now, animating those things, that can be a little different and a little tricky. Certainly depends upon whether or not, for example, if you created a drawing in Illustrator and then you have certain layers that you save, yes, you could bring those layers in. You could import that into the project and then you could move those layers individually. Kind of like what I was talking about. If you bring in, say, a person and you have this part of their arm is in one layer, their hand is in another layer, this part of the arm, the upper arm is in another layer, and it's separate from the body, so that you can actually move all of those different things, right? So it depends upon how you lay them out in those programs to do drawing of something in After Effects and animating it in After Effects. And actually, I'm going to show you something here. I'm going to open a project that I have on here. If I can find it. It's a good project to watch because I created an animation of a loon and I brought this in. What I did is I brought in a still image and then I had to figure out how to make where I needed to cut the image so that it animated. And here, I'm just going to show you this example. Okay. So as you can see here, I have these birds that are flying across the screen, right? And you see the wing flaps, right? But what I had to do is I actually had to take the crane, or the loon in this case, sorry, it's a loon. And I had to separate out the wings and the body. So I'm going to shut these off. So the body is separate from both of the wings. So that's one of the wings. This is the other wing. And here's the body. And then you would animate that separately. So basically I flap the wings. And again, now we're working in 3D space, right? So it all depends upon how you create that image, your drawing, and how you import it into After Effects. Does that make sense, Emily? Let's see, if I were more wanting to edit videos, yes, Carter, I would say Premiere Pro would be what you're looking for. If you're just wanting to edit video footage, absolutely Premiere Pro. Amber, thanks. So I went in here and I actually animated individual birds, and then I layered those birds in a way that, so there's other birds. Oops, that's an upside down bird. The loon was flying backwards. But then I layered them, right? And then I also positioned them in different places in the scene so that when they're flying through here, some of them might be in focus because they're closer to the camera. And some of them might be out of focus because they're further away from the camera. But I create the first one and then I duplicate it and then add those different layers into, so like, here's all my cranes, right? But each of these birds, right, is on its own layer. And not only is the bird on its own layer, if I go in here to find this particular bird, so this particular bird has got the body and wings are separate once again, right? So I brought in that still image and then I had to cut out the body from the wings. And then I had to move my pan behind tool, or my pan behind tool. I had to move that so that it was in the right position on the wing to flap correctly. Does After Effects integrate with Final Cut Pro? If so, what added functionality is there? After Effects does not integrate with Final Cut Pro. After Effects integrates with Premiere Pro, but not Final Cut Pro, because that's, I believe Final Cut is like a Mac product or a separate product, but an Adobe, all of your Adobe suite stuff does interact with one another and integrate with one another, but not Final Cut Pro. Sorry, Ryan. Again, keep asking your questions. So anyway, so I create that first layer and then I will duplicate our bird, right? So we have bird 1, we have bird 2, and they're all coming in at different times, right? And they just kind of flow through. But this is what I'm talking about. You create layers, right? And then you take and put them all into one composition that you then move into and are able to place in another piece. So let's see, there's my composition. And I turned off my background. So I'm going to put my background back. Whoops. So there's my sky. And there's bird 1. But you know, I have my birds flying in this first up in the sky. But all of those things started out with, you know, a first bird that was animated, right? So here's the bird is still, he's not moving anywhere, but you can see, I'm going to put this in full, but you can see here, and it doesn't necessarily matter that it's not perfect, right? Because it's going to fly across the screen pretty quickly. But this is an image that I literally pulled off the web. It's just a photo of a crane. And then I cut out the wings and separated them so I could make them fly. Joyce, the difference between After Effects and Premiere. Premiere is more of a 2D editing platform. Premiere does offer some other things, like you can animate text and do some of those things, add transitions. You can change the look and feel of your video. You can layer video. All of those things you can do within Premiere. After Effects gives you a little more latitude with those editing capabilities. You can get a little fancier with your text. I know that in After Effects, I can actually animate a word by each individual text, like each individual letter within that word. I could animate it differently. There's a variety of presets that also give you the ability to just plop something in and animate it, but those are the biggest differences. After Effects is really more of a robust animating, and you can do some 3D editing with their what you can order from them, but you can also get plugins to get a little bit more robust with your 3D editing as well. What other questions do y'all have? So let's see, I answered your question, Emily, about animating, right? Did that answer your question, Emily? I think that answered your question, Joyce. Personally, I like the way they both work together. I started out actually learning editing in Final Cut Pro. And then they ended that project or that product for a little bit. Or no, I'm sorry, I started in Adobe. So I started using Premiere Pro, and then they ended the product for Mac. And so then I went to Final Cut Pro, and then came back to Adobe products when I started working at Bellevue. And the changes that were made in the interim are just amazing. So the ability I mean, really, the only limitation in either of these two programs is your own imagination. So if your imagination is limited, then your products and what you put out with these programs is more than likely going to be a little limited as well. You know, I know that there are a lot of things beyond even the things that I do uh, just because my day in and day out work doesn't require me to actually get even more robust. But there's some really great simple animations you can do. You can make text type on. There's all kinds of other things that you can do in this program that are really super easy and fully integrate with Premiere Pro. If that makes sense. All right, so I'm going to go back to this other project that I was working on, because once I'm done adding all of the different things that I would add here, and like I said earlier, the keying ability within After Effects is just amazing. The difference between keying something in Premiere and then just the way that some of the elements work. I just really appreciate this program so much more, and the ways in which this program works so much more. I can create, for example, I'm going to see if I can find one quickly. If you wanted to create an element using something from Illustrator, and I am going to see if I can actually find something that has an Illustrator element in it. Nope, not that one. But what I love about, using this program, like I said before, is that I can go in and find something like an Illustrator, a layered document within Illustrator, and I can animate those layers. Like I can find a really cool earth maybe rotating and buildings and make the buildings grow as the earth is turning. And in each of those individual elements can be animated as long as they're on their own layer. Thomas, there is not a certification, but you will get an email from DoSpace saying that you attended the class. So they don't give you a certification, but they will give you a document that says that you were in the class. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to pull this one in to this project. So this is an Illustrator document. There's two different things that you can do. You can bring it in as a composition, which means that everything that's within that composition is going to be flattened and it's going to be a single image, or you can bring it in as footage and you can bring in certain layers, or I'm going to do this. I didn't mean to do that. Import file. Or you can do this, composition, retain layer styles. So I know that I separated out, or at least I hope I did, that I separated out the different layers that are available within this particular piece of artwork. And when I drag it and drop it into this project, it looks like one piece. But when I double click on it, I can go in here and I can literally turn off these different layers, right? Because I separated them out in this particular program. And so I could take and animate on these different pieces within this. Okay. So this is an Illustrator document, and I created each of these individual layers within Illustrator. And I did that so that when I came back into this program, I could actually animate on these different items as they were being discussed. And there's all kinds of different ways that you can animate them on. So I separated out the little film reel and all that so that I could, for example, I could just have that fade on at some point during when I was using this, if the script was talking about all these different ways in which you can utilize your, you can use it on your iPad, you can do Word documents or pictures or videos. And then I would just animate these on as the script was reading them off. but I can't do that unless I separate out those layers. So that's why I say that this program is kind of, the only limit is really your own imagination in regard to what you can create. And you could go out and find something maybe on the internet that you thought was really super cool and then recreate that in either Photoshop or even in one of these programs. I've done that a lot when working on videos through Bellevue University, where I go and I'll learn about something. I'll be like, oh, you know what? I really like the way that they did that. And then I just go into After Effects and see if I can figure out how to do that within After Effects. What's the easiest way to create stingers? So Leomar, are you talking about a stinger as in, well, here, let me do this. I'm going to open this project. So are you talking about something like this? Oops, sorry. I have to put that in quarter because then it'll go faster. But it's rendering. So right now it's using RAMs. Stingers for transitions. All right, so there is, for example, this would be a stinger. So that's kind of a fun little, oh geez, Pi. How long do I work on a project? You know, I can work on a project anywhere from a few hours, depending upon what's needed, to, you know, 40 hours, just depending upon what's needed in regard to animation, or if it's a 3D animation or something like this, for example, creating these individual elements and then creating each of these different things and how they're going to show up within this project. So it just depends. Faye, why do you choose 1280 times 720 versus 1080p for illustration? So I will bring everything in at 1080, but we edit everything in 720 because it's only ending up on the internet anyway. And we have to look at how much space do these videos take up, that sort of thing. So it just depends upon where it's going to end up and then what all needs to go into it. So like I said, if you are going to end up on the web, you may not need something shot and edited in 4K. You have to edit it in 4K if you shot it in 4K, but that's using up an awful lot of RAM. So, you know, thinking about where you're going to end up with it is kind of how you want to look at it. But is that what you're talking about, Leomar, in regard to like a stinger or a transition? This is kind of what I would consider a stinger, but I would create the animation here in this program, and then I would export it from here and then add sound effects and music or whatever to it in another program. So that's kind of the scoop on that. Thanks, Leomar. Any other questions? We've got about 7 minutes left. Again, I know I kind of went off in a couple of different directions. I mean, the one they use on vlogs. Oh, well, are you talking about a stinger as in a sound effect or a stinger as in a transition? Because you can create those here within this program, but it kind of depends upon what you're looking at as a transition. They have a lot of built-in transitions within these programs. So let's see here. So that's, it just kind of depends upon what it is that you're creating. So they're built-in transitions. There are, I'm going to pull this up. So there's effects and presets, which is not something we didn't get to this point. But you can actually go in here and there are different presets that you can apply. There's different presets that you can apply to a transition from one video clip to another video clip. There are plugins that you can buy. Like this one says Trap Code. That's a plugin that you can get through a company called Red Giant. And those are all extra, but those will do speed graph and value graph. Oh, Ryan, you're getting into that is way beyond a basic. That one goes way beyond basic After Effects and it would take way more than 6 minutes to describe. But quickly, I would say, a speed graph, you can actually change the speed of how quickly something animates on or off, or even the angle at which it's coming from. And you can use different graphs within the program to actually tweak those down to the frame, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, that's way beyond a basic After Effects class. You're welcome, Leomar. And there's also other places out there where you can find a template and purchase a template and then use After Effects to edit that template. But you have to have the program. If you buy a template, that's an After Effects template. And I would even recommend, you can find some of these templates for really inexpensive rates on places like Storyblocks, for example, and then maybe invest in After Effects for a month or two while you're building some graphic elements. And then you could stop using the program once your graphic elements are created. Good morning, John. But again, there are a ton of effects and presets that are available within the program. If you have any videos or things that you've created in the past or elements that you've wanted to retain from one program to another, you can actually upload them to Adobe and they can live here and you can use them as stock templates that you can use again and again and again. You can save your own different effects, different things that you've created within the program. You can save it as an effect so that you can use it. You can save presets as well. There's aligning your text. A lot of that is really easy within here when you have a text that you add to your program. I mean, again, an hour basic training is going to be barely scratching the surface of what all this program, the capabilities of this program. So any other questions? We've got 3 minutes left and they usually do a hard stop at the end of the hour. So they kick us all out. What is that? Closing time, that song. You can go wherever you want. You just can't stay here. So yeah, any other questions? I mean, again, there are, I would say this, if you're interested at all, get in there and play around with the program. Go ahead and buy it for that $9.99 a month or whatever it is they charge for it a month. I have the whole suite because I use it a lot at work. But I spend a lot of my free time playing with stuff and finding different things that I can create and use this platform to edit to my specifications and things that I want. Kind of earlier, I believe Emily was asking about how to go in and edit some of these templates or to use another program to draw something and then bring it in. You want to, think about it as an individual element. So if you're going to animate something, you want to think of each individual element and draw each individual element separately. And then you want to think of where it's going to end up. If it's going to end up on the web and it's going to be in a square format, then you want to kind of think about that square format when you're actually creating your graphics. You can create them larger, like each individual person in, say, a comic book animation, and bring them in individually and kind of move them around and play with them on screen. But you have to think about where is the movement going to be. Like if you want it to not look awkward as they're walking across screen, you need to separate out and make sure the knee is working the way a knee would work as you were walking. Unless, of course, you want it to look silly, then you could bring it in and have them walk kind of stiff-legged. So, all right. Well, thank you all so much for joining. It looks like we're ending the evening with 39 folks in the room. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Eli Rigatuso. I am a senior video producer director at Bellevue University here in Omaha, well, Bellevue, Nebraska, and have been working within these programs for quite a while. You can actually find me. If you wanted to shoot me an email, you can shoot me an email at elirigatuso@gmail.com with any other additional questions. And I'll plop there's my email if you can grab that quick before we get kicked out of the room here. But thank you all very much. Appreciate y'all showing up today. You had some really great questions, and I will be back again next month with both a Premiere Pro Basics and an After Effects Basics training. So have a great evening. Thank you so much.